Alrighty, first and foremost, I better start this episode off with a bit of a trigger warning here because we are going to talk about some pretty heavy stuff. I know I promised everybody that we were doing a bit of a fun show this week. We'll do that next week. Some stuff's come to light in my neck of the woods for the AFL that I've showed JPJ, and we need to kind of just discuss all this. So there's going to be talks of trauma, suicide, pregnancy loss, racism, depression. I pretty much think I covered that all. So please listen or watch with caution. If any of these themes are too heavy for you, turn it off, because some of these things are not for everybody to listen to, and some of it can cause some trauma and other things. So please just proceed with caution. JPJ, there's probably no point in doing any kind of intro or anything with this kind of episode because it is a little bit heavy. So we'll just kind of tackle into things in what should be a week for, as you know, how excited I've been and how excited all people in this country are right now for the AFL Grand Final. Sometimes things are more important to talk about. I am very excited for the AFL Grand Final. I'll just preface it with that. Go Sydney Swans. Screw Geelong. I'll have a great time on Saturday. However, some stuff has come to light. It is 9:34 in the morning right now for me as I'm recording. Now, you're going to get this show early. We're dropping this show as soon as we kind of record just because of the current nature of everything that's going on. So basically, when I woke up this morning, a giant story had broken within the world of the AFL of some things that have happened with the Hawthorn Football Club a few years back, when a couple of coaches that were in senior positions then at the Hawthorn Football Club are now in senior positions at other clubs. So they're relevant people as of right now that would kind of seem to be, they're under fire for what happened during their time at the Hawthorn Football Club. So we're going to talk about what's happened here with Hawthorn, and then some kind of other accounts of cultures within the AFL, mainly kind of going with racism and stuff like that, especially when the AFL is very, basically how I'm going to explain it to you, JPJ, is that before every game of any AFL game, there is a call to the First Nations people, the Aboriginal people on this land, and they go through and say, we're playing on the land of wherever we are, and there's a whole thing about how the AFL respects the culture and respects where white people came from in this country, because this is not white people country. This is Aboriginal country. As you know, with America, there's obviously things within that. So, and we're going to kind of chime this into sports in general. Obviously, JPJ is new to the AFL world, but sports in general has a culture with different kinds of things that there's this kind of thing within sport to sweep things under the rug, which I hate. No matter how much you love a sport, it doesn't mean they can have these kind of cultures within their, just within their clubs. So I did send this link to JPJ for him to have a quick read through. We're going to go through everything here. We're also going to talk about some other clubs that went through some similar things. The Adelaide Crows earlier this year and some other clubs surrounding that. But we're going to break down the Hawthorn stuff right now. Again, please, if this is too heavy for you, there's no shame in turning something like this off. It is not for everybody. So, first things first, JPJ, when I sent this to you this morning, you're kind of an outsider looking in. It's not like you have a club that you're like, oh my God, I know this person. But the underlying issue is still the same. That's why I was so eager to talk about this with you, is because you're kind of like, you don't have a cat in the fight here. It's not like you can be biased towards a club and just be like, oh, but this. So we're going to break down some things, but just a generalized kind of skimming through this. What the fuck went through your head?
I mean, yeah, being an outsider and not knowing a ton about, I mean, at this point, this is something that, like, it doesn't matter if it's sport or it doesn't matter if it's, it was just a bunch of bad shit was happening. A bunch of really, really not great things were happening. And like, it involves a sporting team and it involves a sport, which is I mean, it's unfortunate either any way you look at it. This is a different size scandal, I think, than you'll see in a lot of places. I mean, there are things that happen over here in our sports where there are scandals, and some of them have been of a large nature of sorts, but this is like, this is a little different. Like they were doing a bunch of stuff. There was racism involved. They were purposefully trying to break people up with their significant others so they would focus on the sport and not worry about other like that has anything, and then obviously, it dives even deeper into some heavier stuff than that. And that stuff is already heavy. I was just like, I mean,
whoa.
Yeah. Whoa. And like how, again, I don't now, again, you just sent me the article and I just kind of, I didn't breeze through it, but I skimmed through it because, it was like, 15, 20 minutes before we were hopping on. So I was like, all right. And it's a rather large article as it should be when it's covering this nature of things. So I skimmed through it, but like, and it doesn't matter, but like, is Hawthorne a prominent, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. But like, are they good? Like, are they a top team?
In this time, they won 3 premierships with Alistair Clarkson as their head coach in this time. So this was around.
The head coach is the main guy that is.
So the head coach is this was back in between 20. So between
14,
20, I think it said between 2013 and 2015. So Hawthorn were doing well in this time.
Okay.
So Alistair Clarkson, he was the head coach of Hawthorn at that time. He's very regarded as like one of the best coaches in the game.
One of the best coaches ever.
He left coaching last year, and then recently he was hunted down by another club, North Melbourne, who are the worst team in the club. They said, well, this is our guy to get because we want what happened with Hawthorn to happen with us. We want to be the best team. So he's been in the headlines the last 6 months because so many teams have been at him to get his coaching services to be their head coach. Dan Fagan, he is currently the coach of the Brisbane Lions, who were just playing in a prelim last week. So
that means they made the playoffs or whatnot.
Yeah, so basically
like their version of the playoffs.
They were 1 game away from the grand final.
Gotcha.
They lost to Geelong last Friday night. So and Dan Fagan, he's regarded as like one of the nicest people in the sport, but he was the assistant coach at this time for Hawthorn. So again, warning, this story contains details of self-harm, pregnancy loss, intergenerational trauma for Indigenous people. So this is so the media has only just gotten control of this. This review document handed to Hawthorn's senior management 2 weeks ago is now with the AFL Integrity Unit. So they're the people that just handle. That's the team of people that they handle all of this kind of stuff. So I'm going to kind of go back and forth between what happened earlier this year with the Adelaide Crows and the big scandal that happened there, because it has similar undertones of racist stuff and different stories, but similar things. So we're going to kind of go. Collingwood also went through a similar thing with one of their players. So they're saying it should have some pretty dramatic ramifications on what happens. But the problem with the difference between what I believe with this story as opposed to other clubs is that this seems to be directly from upper management of, like, this is the head coach and assistant coach, senior coaches and stuff like that, kind of what we know of anyway. Again, we only know what we know. So basically, I'm going to kind of paraphrase some things and kind of tighten it up, because otherwise, again, this article should be long, but we will be here for 5 or 6 hours trying to articulate everything. I want to try and get everything into what we can. So I'm going to just give you the key points here, and me and JPJ are just going to kind of discuss what that means and why we shouldn't be discussing these things in 2022, to be completely honest. But so according to the families of 3 players interviewed by ABC Sport, the incidents at the center of the review allegedly took place during Clarkson's time as head coach, as a period in which the club won 4 AFL premierships, so including a historic
4.
So yeah, between 2013 and 2015. So he was also he's been in charge for a while, and they won one earlier, and then they won a bunch.
Gotcha.
So that's a very hard feat to do, by the way. even to win one is enough, but to win back-to-back or triple or whatever it may be of premierships in any club's history is a huge feat. So you could imagine how Alistair Clarkson is held in such a high regard to be able to take a club to 3 premierships. Like, you don't do that. No one coach usually does that in AFL's history, and this sport's been going on for hundreds of years, and that doesn't happen very often. So Hawthorn had more than 20 First Nations players in the period of the review. 3 families involved told ABC Sport about the incidents in which clubs staff allegedly bullied and removed First Nation players from their homes, relocated them elsewhere, telling them to choose between their careers and their families. So the thing that, out of just that first paragraph, before even diving into any of individual stories, is that it's not like they're doing this to white people.
No.
This is a clear attack of racism. Yeah. There's no other way to read that. At least for me, that's how I articulate that paragraph, is that this is a racist attack. Because you are a different color, you're being removed from your families, you're being removed from your... I mean, to remove someone from their home just to play fucking sport is dumb. No matter how regarded you are or how much your dream is to play any sport, to break your... Sacrifice is one thing, but to be removed from your home, relocated, removed from your family, removed from partners, that's just like, for sport.
Yeah.
No offense.
Not ideal. No. And it shouldn't be.
It's a racist attack.
Again, 100%. I mean, if this was just about the sport or just about whatever, then it would have happened to all
players,
all different types of kids. You know what I mean? I think they viewed those type of people as maybe they were like, hey, it'll be easier for us to take I don't know what their thought process was.
Yeah, I can't get behind that way.
I don't did they think it would be I don't understand what the thought process of doing anything like this is, but like they clearly were like, hey, we're targeting these type of kids and that's what we're doing. And that, because if it was just about good sport players and good whatever, then there would have been all different types of kids.
So it says in some cases, coaches allegedly concede at least 2 players to remove SIM cards from their phones and insert new ones in attempts to cut them off from their partners and focus them entirely on the club's pursuit of football success. In each case, the player was a young First Nations draftee in the first 5 years with the club.
So young, impressionable.
So they're like 18 years old.
Yeah, so they're super young, probably being told, hey, you're going to become a lucrative player and all this stuff. You need to focus, blah, 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 blah. They're young. They're not fully formed adults yet.
Ugh.
So they're easily impressionable where you can tell them things and, they might believe it. They're more likely to believe it if they're younger, especially if they're excommunicated, it sounds like, from anybody that is their family or people they care about. If they're like, you said they remove SIM cards in their phones. And like I read some, they were saying they were doing that, removing SIM cards for all contacts, completely shutting people off from their family and people, so it's like, who else are they going to listen to?
Yeah, exactly. They've got no outlet.
And that guy's a coach. Yeah, and these guys, like, if I played, again, I didn't make it to any high level, but like I played sport through some high school sports, and I played, those coaches are your teachers, like those, like, you know what I mean? Like those people, those are adults. Like when I'm a 15-year-old kid, my coach is a dude in his late 20s, early 30s. Like I'm going to listen to him. He's my superior in that world. Like that's what, you know what I mean? So if you're a young, impressionable kid that's been taken away from your family, they give you a phone with no contact whatsoever to your family. The people you're going to listen to are the people in charge of where you are. And if they're telling you wrong, terrible things, if you're going to believe them, you might.
So the gravest accusations relate to the club's alleged intimidation tactics to separate couples at the earliest stage of pregnancies and parenthood, and the alleged demand that one player should instruct his partner to terminate a pregnancy. Actions the families say created multiple generational traumas.
Well, I mean, that to
So
me,
that you just told a young expecting father to go break up with his girlfriend, wife, whatever, and tell her to abort their child.
yeah. So like that, so this part of it to me, that has nothing. I mean, what the hell is that? What does that have to do with sport? That is you saying,
Because
"Hey,
so
we don't
basically they're
want
like
First Nation."
fucking
That's a racism. That's a racist. That to me is where it screams racism to me. Because whether they have kids or not, what the hell does that have to do with anything? What does that have to do with anything besides the fact that you don't like this type of people and you don't want there to be more of them? That's how I take that. How does that, you know what I mean?
I
I don't have any other way other
I
than to
don't know
take
how
it that
to.
way. Personally.
This is a very grim read, and it's just like, how do I articulate that feeling? Like nothing is as important as that. And like, no matter how much the thought process, not that I'm trying to defend them at all, because I'm really fucking not, but their thought process must be like, you need to focus on Hawthorn. You need to focus on
Yeah,
football. Like, how the fuck does that make any difference whether you're having a kid or not?
it doesn't. It doesn't. That's why I think this part of it is what screamed to me like, yeah, no, this has nothing to. This has to do with race to me. That's where I get. This is where that screams out to me the most. Because again, what
Go. I'll let you
yeah. I mean, I'm probably going to repeat myself, but like,
go for it.
like, how else? What does that have to do with sport?
I don't honestly know. I wasn't when I clicked on this article this morning. I did not expect to read that. I'll put it
Yeah,
that way. I've never
I
heard
can.
of that.
As fucked up as it is, I can understand even the stupid thought process of being like, hey, we have this 18-year-old kid who's going to be a superstar for this club. We need him to stop talking to his girl so much and focus on football. Or we need him to stop talking to it. It's dumb. It shouldn't matter. But I can see I can see a certain type of person thinking that way. But when you're like,
Sure.
hey, wait a minute, we need to make sure that they abort their child. Like that is a whole different
That
level
sentence should never come out
of
of someone's mouth.
no.
So
I don't.
this is
Yeah.
where it gets. Wait till you actually hear the actual stories. Again, I'm going to kind of condense these down just so we can try and break these down. But so obviously their names have been changed for just for
Yeah,
privacy
the
reasons,
safety or
and the safeties
yeah.
of these. So when Ian was drafted to the Hawthorn Football Club, he had already shouldered the responsibilities of parenthood for some time, developing a strong bond with his partner Amy's first child, loving it like his own, hoping the couple would soon have another. So he's obviously been drafted to Hawthorn, playing
Yep.
footy, playing at an AFL level, and he's like, okay, I've got a step kid, or whatever you want to call this kid, and I want to have a baby soon with my partner. So, Ian's early days at Hawthorn had been a sad time too. Unknown to most, Amy had miscarried their first pregnancy, but the couple was cautiously delighted when she soon fell pregnant again. Oh, here's Lou, just to say hello.
Lou's just
Like,
strolling on in.
Lou's like, I don't care how heavy this is, I'm making an appearance. How you doing,
He's
Lou?
like, I just needed people to know I'm here. But anyway.
So sum everything up there in that first couple of paragraphs. They had miscarried their first pregnancy. So you can already imagine the trauma of that. I don't know what that feels like, but I could imagine.
I don't either.
I could imagine the trauma that those two would be going through. And then, so basically, Ian was so excited to go to work one day when, they hit the 12-week mark, finally feeling confident enough to share the news with his teammates. And, they're his best friends in the world. You know what I mean? Like,
of course,
holy
the camaraderie
shit.
you have of a team, especially a team of that level, like when you're traveling and all sorts, like
Oh.
those are your those are your brothers, those are your family,
So, all right. So, suddenly when he got there and started, wanting to tell people, so Ian alleges that a group of coaches, including Alistair Clarkson and Chris Fagan, ushered him into an office where he was urged to have the pregnancy terminated, get rid of his partner, and move into the home of an assistant coach. It was intimidating, confusing, and upsetting, Ian says.
I would think.
So he said Clarkson just leaned over me and demanded that I get rid of my unborn child and my partner. I was then manipulated and convinced to remove my SIM card from my phone so there was no further contact between my family and me. They told me I'd be living with one of the assistant coaches, or with one of the other coaches from that night onwards.
You know?
I'll just keep reading through.
Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to, like you said a little bit earlier, it's impossible for me to have thoughts or think that way.
We're just kind of absorbing this information. This is the first time you're hearing this,
yeah,
just absorb this information and then we'll just kind of summarize. But Ian phoned Amy, by then at work herself, and in a conversation that only lasted seconds, relayed information she could barely fathom. I just remembered that he could barely get the words out and he seemed to be crying, and he quickly said that we needed to terminate the pregnancy and end the relationship. So basically they've gone from having this incredible moment of being like, this is happening, where we're going to start telling people about pregnancy, and then all of a sudden this happens. So Amy says the worst was to come. With Ian's phone disconnected and his whereabouts unknown, she said she had to somehow stay calm for her toddler and her unborn baby and hunt down club staff she barely knew. She contacted Hawthorn's player development manager, Jason Burt, and asked for a meeting with Ian to understand what was happening. Poignantly, she asked for a meeting to occur at her home, so she had an opportunity to talk with Ian away from the club. So she was trying to be smart about this and remove him from the club so she could just talk to him.
So she automatically thought that, well, something's fishy, like this isn't normal. Something's weird here, you know?
She says Hawthorn officials first asked if they could sit in the street outside while Ian met with Amy, as they were concerned about Ian's well-being and claimed that Amy's father was a threat to Ian. She said, my dad was a well-respected and loving and caring and Aboriginal man in the community. So again, he was not a threat at all. They had never met my dad. They just assumed he was a threat. Assuming a Aboriginal person is a threat just because they're Aboriginal. Yeah, exactly. That head scratch is exactly how I feel about that. So, you know, when all of this stuff went down with Black Lives Matter last year, the year before, was it last year?
It was 2020.
So all of that stuff, and people like, America's a racist country. This only happens in America. It's like, no, it fucking doesn't. It doesn't.
No, of course not.
I see, and this is just built into the foundations of this country. I see people in public, say in a shopping center or in a supermarket or whatever, an Aboriginal person will walk into a shop and 90% of the people who are white will stare at them thinking they're stealing. Purely because they are brown. So anyone that says that America's got the main problem is like not looking, especially Australia, it happens in this country too. Okay, so basically to sum up what happened here is that Ian barely talked. He said that he didn't want to be with her, basically, and was speaking for him. She said for the whole week while Jason was talking to her, he repeatedly told me that Ian had made these decisions on his own, but she just felt there was more to it. She felt, like you said, there was something fishy going on. So in this story, to sum it up, they had broken up his relationship, asked him to abort their newborn child, removed him from his family. It's just like, what the fuck? She then said that she noticed like around the 5 months. So wait a minute, I'm reading as I kind of. She didn't want him to miss any of the things like important ultrasounds. Obviously, she didn't get this kid. She didn't terminate this pregnancy.
Yeah.
She said that She wanted him to be in an important ultrasound and was reassured Ian would be there, but he never showed. She said she still wasn't able to call or text him. She resorted to emailing him images of the baby, so she was sending him ultrasounds to his
Okay.
an email. Only at the 5-month of the pregnancy, by which point Ian's mental health had noticeably frayed, did the club finally allow Ian's return to his family. But that too came with conditions: a move away from a suburb the club didn't approve of, to more of one keeping in Hawthorn's image. So basically, they wanted to remove him from an Aboriginal community and move him into somewhere else in Melbourne to look better for Hawthorn, which is...
Of course.
They just bullied us into moving house, and Amy said she just gave in because she felt powerless. I wanted to keep my family together and for Ian to live his dream of playing AFL footy. But it meant moving away from family support at a very stressful time. She had diabetes. We had to move house when I was 37 weeks pregnant.
Yikes. Okay.
It was a very stressful
37.
time. And I remember thinking that I should be resting right now, not moving heavy furniture. I had my baby the following week at 38 weeks.
Wow. I was going to say, that's 9 times 4 is 36. So that's right at, yeah. So imagine, I mean, we can't being men, but imagine being that you're ready to give birth. You're ready to pop, and you're dealing with, for the last few months, see you later, Lou. For the last few months, and it's not funny, but like for the last few months, you're dealing with all this craziness happening out of nowhere where this is bullshit. Something's going on. You can't even talk to your love. You can't even talk to them. You're talking to a representative from him that keeps on telling you, yeah, no, it's over. He's serious, blah, blah. Okay, well, I want to hear that from him. Oh, no, he's good. He told us. Well, I don't believe you. Yeah. I don't believe you. Like, who are you? And then you're pregnant and you have to go through all this stuff, and then you have to move. And you're like, come on, man. The stress and just it's just terrible. It's terrible.
So 3 months later, Amy dug in and demanded a return to the neighborhood where she had support. She was suffering from postnatal depression and she felt very isolated. She needed her family. Even back in the quote-unquote rough suburb, there were smaller slights that still rankle. She said she was affronted when Clarkson insisted on visiting one night and offered commentary on the house cleanliness. Yikes. 6 months after the birth of their child, Ian and Amy were shocked to find they were expecting again. She explains the initial excitement she felt, and she said it was quickly replaced with fear when she remembered the trauma that she just had going through with our previous baby. So here they go again. This time it gets a little bit more grim. So I spoke to him and he became stressed immediately, not because he wasn't a capable, beautiful father, but because we both knew the reaction of what the club would be. I didn't want to lose Ian again. I needed him there with me and the kids, and I didn't want to put his footy career at risk. I felt like Hawthorn always used that against us. She resigned herself to a termination whose heartbreaking legacy now surrounds her in a form of pregnancy-themed artworks and textiles she had created as a means of processing her grief and guilt. I remember my mother taking me to the hospital. As I got out of the car, she said, "You don't have to do this." Before I knew it, I was laying in a hospital bed, waiting to be taken into the theatre room. The nurses give me medication to soften my cervix. I remember getting up at one stage and saying to myself, just walk out, just leave. But I began to feel cramps and thought to myself, it's too late. They've already gave me the medication. So she aborted the second child because of what she was afraid to go through again. There's a quote here that kind of like stands out to me. All I ever wanted was to become an AFL player. They broke his spirit as a proud Aboriginal man.
Yeah.
That is just like... He said at the end of this article, like the end of this bit of the article, he said, I've lost the love of the game. I've had suicide attempts. They broke me as a footballer. They broke me as a man. And they broke me as a family man. I only wish I had spoken up when this happened, as I could possibly save others going through it. Like, what the fuck? He went through all of that to not even have the will anymore to even do what he loved doing. Nothing is worth that.
It sounds like at plenty of points he didn't even have the will to live
Well, yeah,
anymore.
he said he really didn't.
He
And
said he had suicide attempts.
so there's a couple of other stories here that we're not going to go into just because they're of
They're of the same
they're of
ilk,
the
like the
same.
same
It's
ilk
not saying they're all the
of what's
same.
happening.
I'm just saying that gives you a breakdown of what the fuck is going on. So, again, the other stories contain stuff of like breaking up relationships, breaking up, pregnancies, and it was all under. Oh my god, it was all under Alistair Clarkson and Chris Fagan. So, I mean, it's just like what the actual fuck, really? The AFL has responded and said they're in a review. A pretty standard company thing to say. We take all these allegations seriously. We're reviewing the process. Blah blah blah. I mean, and they've offered them assistance and mental health stuff. It's like, but again, we can't change what happened. This is obviously what happened, but also stuff like this should never have fucking happened. So the key points of this is just like removing SIM cards from a phone so you don't have any contact with any of your loved ones, asking someone to abort a pregnancy, asking people to break up with loved ones, moving people away from their rough neighborhoods. And it's all with First Nations people. It's all with Aboriginal people. This is just like, what the actual fuck? Like, I don't understand that this happened in between 2013 and 2015. That is not that long ago. It's basically yesterday. Do you know what I mean? Like that. That's not.
Stuff, it's not. Yeah, it's a handful of years ago.
It's not like it's happening in the 17 fucking 90s. Like this is happening.
Oh yeah.
Now.
Right now.
And that's why like I have such an argument with people when people like racism doesn't exist anymore. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Yeah.
I feel like it just gets swept under the rug a lot more now.
Well, yeah, and people have blinders onto it. They don't.
We do it as well. We probably do it without even realizing we're doing it because we are white and we have privilege just for being this color. I don't. When people like white, what is like? I don't have white. It's like, yeah, you do have white privilege. Just because you're not rich and fucking famous and you live in a mansion doesn't mean you don't have privilege. There's other forms of privilege other than what you think privilege is. Like we have white privilege just for being white, and like this kind of stuff. Sport is a very. There's a certain culture that surrounds majority of sports in the world, and racism, sexism, all different kinds of things. It's like there's a reason. There's a rhyme and a reason to everything, and this is motivated right here. This story is race, and I'm not having any other debate about. Oh, it's not. It is. This is a race thing, because otherwise it would be happening to every single team member that's going through pregnancy and stuff like that. And while we don't know if that happened or not, this is the stuff that's come to light. So until someone tells us otherwise, not that it would make it any better if it wasn't racist. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, like, it would still be fucking awful if it was happening to everybody, no matter what their race is. But, like, this is a clear attack of racism because all of these coaches that are doing this are all white people.
Yeah, I mean, and there's no other, in my opinion, there's no other way you can look at it. Because, like you said, if winning was the most important factor, if greed, and don't get me wrong, there's greed behind everything.
Oh yeah,
there's greed behind everything. But if greed was the main motivating factor, like I said, if glory and winning and championships were the main factor, then they would have been doing this to people of all colors, sizes, shapes. It wouldn't have mattered because you would have been doing it to the best people. But the fact that it was all Aboriginal First Nation people, how else are you supposed to look at it? So it'd be like if the same thing happened over here and everybody they did it to was an African American.
Yeah.
How else are you supposed to look? What? how else are you supposed to
You're
look
blind if you're not reading it like
it's
that.
pretty.
So
Sometimes things are fucking simple. You can look at
yeah,
something and go,
yeah,
"Oh, that's simple."
yeah.
But
So
it's not always
so
that way with
obviously,
everyone.
because there's been some time past, there is a lot of management and stuff that aren't at Hawthorn anymore. However, that doesn't
Mhm.
make it any less of a blow for the club. But
No.
Hawthorn commissioned a review to look into how First Nations players were treated during Alistair Clarkson's time at the Hawks. So, on the flip side of this, looking at this from what does this mean for him right now? 5 weeks ago, after a race between multiple clubs to get Alistair Clarkson to their club to coach, North Melbourne, who I said at the beginning of the show, they finished 18th on the ladder. They finished at the bottom of the ladder this year. They won, I think, 2 games for the entire season. They are horrible. They finally got Alistair Clarkson, who again was all of this hunted down man of like, we want this guy. In my opinion,
he'll still be there at some point.
both, well, whoever was involved, but the 2 senior coaches that are now doing coaching of North Melbourne and Brisbane, respectively, is Alistair Clarkson and Chris Fagan, should be immediately terminated, or at least suspended upon review.
So this is proven stuff, right? That's what this is. This document, or is it still in?
It's still in the allegedly category because they're reviewing it. But if multiple, this is 3 different stories with very similar things.
Yeah,
you don't just make this up.
I agree, but
I guess
if it's not proven, people will, like the teams. Not saying they won't do the right thing. Not saying they won't do the right thing.
Sure.
But I could easily see someone say, well, as of right now, those are just allegations.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they're doing their due diligence. And until we know more,
you are absolutely right.
He's gonna remain the coach of this team.
It'll be the standard. It'll be the standard
bullshit.
Standard bullshit. I'm going to go on Hawthorn's. Let me see Hawthorn. If Hawthorn have put up a statement in the, they have. Okay. So this was as of a few hours ago. Earlier this year, the Hawthorn Football Club engaged external First Nations consultants to liaison with current and former First Nation players and staff to learn more about their experience at the club. This important work has raised disturbing historical allegations that require further investigation. Upon learning of these allegations, the club immediately engaged AFL Integrity as is appropriate. The club will continue to provide support to those who have participated in this process, and their well-being remains our first priority. While the process indicated the current environment at the club is culturally safe, it is also recommended that some of the club's current First Nations training and development programs should continue to be strengthened. The club places the best interests and welfare of our players and staff as number 1 priority. Given the matters raised are confidential, the club will not provide any further comment at this time. So, that's pretty standard thing to say.
We're going to take care of the families. We're sorry. We're looking into it.
So again, we have to look at it from right now perspective is that I don't even think the CEO at the time of Hawthorn is the same CEO right now. So the people in charge right now should, to a certain degree, not be held responsible. It should be the people that were in charge at the time. You can't just point fingers and just say Hawthorn when it wasn't even a lot of the people there now. From my understanding, I don't know that much about Hawthorn. But I mean, while allegations are pending, while investigations are going on, Alistair Clarkson is very lucky we're going into an off-season as of Saturday.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So is Chris Fagan, to be completely honest. And they're very lucky they're not in a grand final right now.
Yeah, because, later on this week for you,
Saturday,
the focus isn't going to be on this article. The focus is going to be on the game, and that'll give them some reprieve. But again, it'll also give the offseason will also give the current owners and current CEOs of these teams, especially Hawthorn, because I know you said not this exact, but this has happened as earlier as this year with other teams as well. But this will give the CEO, the president of Hawthorn, a whole off season to really sit there and go what do we do?
Yeah.
What should we do? You know,
it is a weird, and I hate that this happens, but this will eventually get less and less talked about over the next few weeks
100%,
because, like,
100%.
whatever. But in my opinion, right now, Chris Fagan and Alistair Clarkson should be suspended until the review is complete.
Yes, 100%, 100%. At the that's minimum.
Yeah,
that should be minimum.
It's like, what the hell? So you mentioned other clubs, and basically earlier this year, this happened in. So this story came to light at the beginning of August. So that in 2018, so I'll just explain to you this. So in the off season, in preseason, a lot of clubs review their year and they go to camps and stuff to be like, hey, what the fuck do we need to do to make things better? So in 2017, the Adelaide Crows had like a banner year. They were kicking some serious fucking ass.
Yeah.
We were right into the grand final with the Richmond Tigers and we choked. Like, the Adelaide Crows choked and Richmond won the grand final in 2017. And people were like, how does this, like, we were so dominant all year. Like, I'm talking, it was a good time to like the Adelaide Crows. Yeah. So I'm going to go through a timeline of what happened with this, because it's very different from this story. This all pertains to like this camp that they went to be better, basically. So this happened in the so between the 2017 and 2018 season is when this camp took place. But so this is a bit of a timeline to break everything down and kind of get your head, because JPJ has not read this. I don't think I talked to JPJ about this because it was quite intense. No. Obviously, this is my team that I love to bits, so it was like, oh shit. And I still stand by everything that I say with Hawthorn with the Adelaide Football Club, because this isn't okay. But so in early 2017, Adelaide engages with Collective Mind. So Collective Mind are an organization that deals with stuff like different people to better themselves with very extreme tactics. So they engage with Collective Mind to deliver a mindset performance program. Senior players feature in a video on Collective Mind's website with high praise for the program. The Crows would then sign a 2-year deal with the Mind Training Company. So they're a mind training company.
Gotcha.
You can imagine. So 2017, in September 2017, after finishing the home and away season on top of the ladder, and we passionately won 2 finals to get into the grand final. Like, the Adelaide Crows not only ended up, so they were minor premiers, they finished the home and away season like round 1 to 23 on top of the ladder. We then decisively won 2 finals to get into the grand final. So we were rolling.
Yeah.
The Crows are trumped by Richmond in the grand final, losing by 48 points at the MCG. The Crows then asked Collective Mind to develop a plan for a preseason training camp to launch their 2018 season. So late January, early February 2018, Crows players travel to the Gold Coast for a camp to focus on strengthening the resilience and connection of the team. As the brief was outside Collective Mind's core IP, the company went to market and engaged specialists to help deliver the program. Now, so... On March 23rd, 2018, the then assistant coach hints at a quite unique Crows preseason event. They were blindfolded while in a bus. Adelaide Chief Executive Andrew Fagan doesn't reveal specifics about the camp, but says there were elements of the camp that were deliberately thrown in for a little bit of confusion. So this is before, in 2018 when this was coming out, this was before people were just like, what the fuck? This was called like an infamous training camp because people were like, what happened on this camp? Like, what the fuck is going down? So more stuff came out.
Is that Fagan related to the other one by any chance?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
So anyway, So, this is where it gets really bad because players were then started to be asked about this camp, and they were told they signed
Not allowed to talk about
NDAs.
NDAs. Yeah.
So whenever you sign an NDA,
I mean, some shit went down.
Yeah, basically. So there was different groups of this camp. There was Group 1, Group 2, Group 3. Apparently, Group 1 is where all of this shit went down. Was like they were treated. There was players saying, without going into specifics, obviously, saying they were not in a good headspace from what they endured. So let me just again, and in this between this time, Taylor Walker, who was then the Crows captain, was saying that this was a wonderful thing, most beneficial and rewarding things that he's ever done. So obviously, they're telling Crows players to go out to the media and debunk this story. Say, hey, nothing went wrong. Hey? The then Adelaide coach, Don Pike, denies claims that his playing group is fractured over the preseason mindfulness camp. He says it brought players a sense of togetherness and rubbishes any reports that they were distressed and complained to the AFL's Players Association. I'm not going to apologize for trying to get us better. So Don Pike was the coach at this time. A lot of people didn't like him. This was just adding to it. This is where it starts to get really wonky. More details. So on March 29th, 2018, more details around the camp emerged, with Crows players repeatedly played the Richmond theme song on the bus to the camp. So they were just played, the people that beat them, they were played their theme song over and over again on a loop. Interesting tactic.
Were these people like hypnotized? Like, were they brainwashed? Why? I don't understand why you would play. Like, were they trying to have them hate that team? Like, I don't understand.
Because they lost to the... I have no idea. So, Adelaide had then cut ties with Collective Minds as of June 23rd, 2018. Then football boss Brett Burton and Don Pike front the media, with Burton declaring it was a mutual decision between the club and the company, adding, we had some good impact with the program last year, but this year it hasn't gone the way we wanted to. That's from both parties. Pike labels the camp as a fail. Okay, so you'd think at that point, all right, it's dead in the water.
Yeah.
Whatever. So a year later, the Crows went from finishing first on the ladder in 2017, minor premiers going into a grand final. They finished 12th the next year on a ladder. That's quite the dip. They missed finals after a 12-10 season. They had a heap of injuries throughout their 2018 season. Yikes. So then again, this is where it gets worse. Collective Minds hold a press briefing in Melbourne to address what was described as salacious claims about the camp. They deny players were left scarred by the experience and deflect blame for Crows' dreadful AFL season. Yup, okay. A heap of players are then asking to be traded away. More stuff happens. Okay, so I'm going to get into the nitty-gritty of what really... So Don Pike had then stepped down and we got a new coach. CEO stepped down of Adelaide. Pretty much from top to bottom, the AFL management for... the Adelaide Crows management changed 100%. There was nearly no one left from that time of the camp. So when... What I'm about to talk about is that, again, like Hawthorn, a lot of people that were there then were not there now. So, again, you have to hold accountability somewhere, but it can't be to the people that weren't there. But anyway.
Yeah.
So, the AFL actually investigated this because still we didn't know a lot of details at the time of what actually happened at this camp. So the AFL investigated and they said it was fine. The investigation was closed. Nothing went wrong. So why this has come to bat is that earlier this year, Eddie Betts, who is one of the greatest Aboriginal players in the history of... One of the greatest players in the game ever. He would kick these ridiculous goals. Like, he had that many goal of the years because he was just that good. So, he released a book. And he said he's going to become the first player to reveal details about this camp because this isn't okay. So this is where it gets. So this is a piece from Eddie Betts' new autobiography. The All-Australian dubbing the camp is weird and completely disrespectful. Betts writes that private details shared in a counselling session during the camp were misused, while also claiming the camp misappropriated sensitive Aboriginal culture rituals. He confirms the Richmond theme song was played repeatedly during a training session, while at one stage he was put into a body harness with a rope attached and told to fight for his life towards a knife to cut himself free. While camp instructors prepped him with verbal abuse, Betts writes, I felt like I lost the drive to play footy, and to be honest, I'm not sure I ever had the same energy I did before that camp. So there was allegations from Eddie Betts saying that they used Aboriginal talking sticks, misappropriately used them in the camp. Again, this was all in group 1. There was 3 groups, but this is the person. So a lot of players come out, white people, from the Adelaide Crows and said, I didn't have this experience at the camp.
Okay.
But there was also some white players that were in group 1 that did have that experience at the camp and said, I mean, there was allegations of people being so, like, distraught. They were, like, vomiting and stuff, and the people there were just like, whatever.
Gotcha.
So this camp, I mean, obviously, you shouldn't be... This was labeled by some as a masculinity camp, to bring people together. They said that in this camp, basically, football is more important than your wives.
Everything, yeah.
And basically, they want these people to be together so much, right? They want this club to be together so much that if another player was to sleep with your wife, that's okay.
Well, all right. Yeah, I don't think that would be okay.
Yeah. So there's other stuff that went into it. Obviously, I'm not going to break down absolutely everything that happened. But to say that cultures of clubs need to change is... And this is only 2 accounts of many different things that have happened over the years. And again, it seems to be a lot of sweeping under the rug, because this came out August 5th, and guess how many people are still talking about this now?
Yeah. Well, maybe this new report today will get people
actually, I had
to talk
seen,
about it again.
I have seen some stuff about it today, like,
yeah,
hey,
I think it'll be part of the news cycle, probably leading up to the game. And then I think probably,
the game
at least
will
how
dominate,
it happens over here in America, something will come out. We'll talk about it for 3 or 4 days. And then there'll be another week 3 of NFL football or this or that. And then see you later. We're on to the next thing. See you later. Forgot about it.
Again, some of the players that were at this camp are still with the Adelaide Crows now. Some aren't. But they've all have pretty much, even Eddie Betts said, this isn't an attack on this club that's in the structure of it right now. It's what happened then. Also, it's a part of his story and many other players' stories as well. Yeah. So it's just... I mean, when I read that, I was like, oh, like, this is not...
Yeah, of course.
This is not good.
No.
Again, racism undertones of using different Aboriginal things. And the thing that really bothered me the most is that even Josh Jenkins, who is another player for the AFL, another player for the Adelaide Crows, who eventually went on to another team, said that the thing that bothered him most is that I had counselling sessions about stuff that was in my childhood that was then misused. So counsellors had then talked to this camp, and that was used against them in this training program. So like childhood trauma and stuff like that. So that's like a whole
psychological, man. That's fucking dismantling people.
Yeah,
you're trying to psychologically dismantle someone and like rebuild them the way you want to build them. That's the vibe. That's the vibe that I get.
All for sport.
All for greed to win.
Because they came so close.
I mean, like you said, there is some other undertones here.
Oh, sure.
Clearly.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's because they want to win. They want to win.
I understand wanting to win, but like,
winning makes more money, makes the owners more money, makes all the, and at the end of the day, that's, there have been big scandals over here too. Not to this extent, or at least none that I've come to my attention, but like there's a lot of players in the NFL. There's a lot of players in the NBA. There's a lot of players in all sports that do terrible shit.
Mm-hmm.
They do terrible shit, and they might get suspended for a little bit, but nothing really. Deshaun Watson is a quarterback in the NFL. He's a 25-year-old, top 5 talent perspective, top 5 quarterback in the league. And that is somebody, if you're looking at it objectively, you're like, ooh, this is a quarterback that could be my star player for the next decade. He's worth a lot of money. Well, before last season, 24 different women came out and said that he got massages from them and was inappropriate in all those massages, and accused him of not rape, but of sexual misconduct, sexual assault, 24 different women. Now, he played for the Houston Texans. He sat out all of last year. All these cases were brought civilly, not federally, but civilly. 22 or 21 of the cases were dropped. He not dropped, but like he paid them off.
Yeah.
He said, all right, settlement. I'm not dealing with this shit. And right in the process, as this was still going on, another team, the Cleveland Browns, traded for Deshaun Watson because they've had no good quarterback for 30 years. Like they've had no good quarterback forever. Mm-hmm. They traded for Deshaun Watson. And not only did they do that, they offered him the largest quarterback, the largest contract that a quarterback has ever gotten, 100% guaranteed money, which was the first contract in the history of the NFL that was 100% guaranteed money for a guy that had just less than a year earlier been accused by 24 different women of sexual assault. So if that doesn't tell you that winning and championships and things like that are more important to some of these people that run these teams, I don't know what else will. The story that we went through today, there's one of the bigger ones that I can ever remember is the Penn State. Penn State is a prominent college in Pennsylvania. In 2011 is when all this shit kind of broke, but they had an assistant coach. His name was Jerry Sandusky. And he got indicted on 52 counts of child molestation. That dealt all the way back between 1994 and 2009. And they had an independent investigation by the FBI, and they reported that Penn State's longtime head football coach at the time, Joe Paterno, along with the president of the college, the athletic director of the college, and another highly ranked assistant coach, knew about allegations of child abuse by Sandusky as early as 1998.
Oh, my goodness gracious.
And because Penn State was a national powerhouse that won national championships and made a fuck ton of money doing so, those people that knew that said, yeah, well,
it makes you wonder
we're winning.
Like the thing that, like, so if this is the stuff we know, imagine the stuff we don't know. Imagine the stuff we don't know what's happened.
Some of the stories that came out, like he had children in the showers and bad.
Yuck.
Bad.
Ugh.
And high-ranking people that were in charge of college kids and younger kids at camps. They were in charge, knew that they had a dangerous predator on their team, and they were like, well, you know what? We go 12-1 every year. So
whatever.
We go 12-1 and are in national championship games. So
it makes you what we heard today, and like what you're saying there, and what happened with the Adelaide Crows, and that's like how many people knew about this situation and just.
I'll bet you a lot. I bet, well, maybe not a lot, but I bet you quite a few. And they said, yeah, well, turn a blind eye because other things are more important.
Hawthorn were winning premierships, so whatever, correct. I guess. And
yeah, they were the dominant team when that was going on. So, hey, let's not ruin what we got. That's
even worse that, like, in Alistair Clarkson's mind or whoever was, manifesting
the mastermind
or whatever, was like, well, to justify what they were doing, they were like, well, it's working. because we're winning.
Correct. So we're winning the championship 4 out of 5 years or whatever it was. Like what we're doing right now, literally, like, all right, well, we're winning, so it's not a big deal. It's not. It's helping. It's not a big deal. And I think when you get to it, you have to understand. And again, I know the NFL, in the grand scheme of things, makes a ton more money yearly than the AFL.
Yeah.
Right.
Maybe in terms of sheer money, but maybe not on a percentage level.
Yeah, maybe not.
Yeah,
but like the people that own these teams, these guys or girls or these people are they might not be the Jeff Bezoses of the world, but they are very, very wealthy people.
Yeah.
And when
the CEOs of these clubs are, I know that,
and I am convinced when you get to a certain level of wealth, no matter, I mean, don't get me wrong, there's good people that have wealth, but I'm convinced.
Put you in your perspective of what like these, a CEO of one of the CEOs. So the CEO of Port Adelaide is David Koch, and he is the co-host of Sunrise, which is the Today Show in Australia.
There you go. So that guy's he's rich. multi-millionaire.
He owns enough money to own a club.
So he's probably a billionaire. Yeah, he's probably a billionaire. Once you get, I'm convinced, and I'll never know probably because I'll never have this amount of money.
No.
I am convinced that once you get to a certain level of money, stature, money is power too, just that certain level, definitely. Morals go out the fucking window. And you're just like, I just need more.
Because again, if this is the stuff that we do know, imagine all the stuff that we don't know that has gone down in all of the times and stuff like this that's happening probably to this day in a lot of cultures. And again, I'm not pointing fingers and saying it's any one person's fault, but I'm just saying that some accountability needs to be, to circle back to what we were originally talking to. Like, so what happened with the Adelaide Crows this year basically is that the now coach, Matthew Nicks, come out and said, hey, I wasn't here at this time. However, we need to do something about this. Adelaide put out a statement and stuff like that. And even the players that said all of this stuff about the Adelaide Crows stuff was like, listen, we understand the management that is there now is not the management that was there in 2018 or 2018. So we understand, but it just needs to come to light so this shit doesn't happen again. In the case of the Hawthorn thing is that there's active people within the football world right now that were there then. And it's like that they need to be held accountable because, again, while they might have been the masterminds of all of this, it all comes back down with these stories to these people. And again, it's not proven or anything like that yet, but why make this bullshit up? You know what I mean? Like, why make this? Why make this up? I don't understand. If it was just one allegation, then you could go, okay, let's just see what happens here. It's 3 different stories, and trust me, between even the time that we're talking right now and the end of today, there'll be more.
Oh yeah,
more people 100%. Are now going to come out and say, "Oh, this happened," and then the teammates around and say, "No, I seen this happen," and it'll just keep coming and growing. And again, we're 3 days out from the AFL Grand Final. This is going to dominate news cycles for the AFL for the next few days. And then the AFL Grand Final will happen and they'll happily go into an off season. And
they'll be celebrating the champion and they'll be going through all these things and they'll be talking about
trades and what happens in 2023. Exactly. And the AFLW will be roaring off. Correct. And it's just, I hate being that person, but by the time Saturday rolls around, I can nearly guarantee that the AFL media will not be talking about this story.
I would, 100%. And that's how most things are operated over here too. Oh, here's this thing. This guy, domestic violence against his wife or against his girlfriend or his partner. 2 days later,
Kim Kardashian got married.
2 days later, something. Oh, this happened, blah, 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 blah. And then that guy's playing in the game on Sunday.
And nobody says anything. Okay, well,
nope.
And like to go through and then to have like the First Nations, emerging and gathering on grand final day and just be like, well, this is happening, but some of your clubs are taking cultures and not respecting it. And it's like, where else is it happening? And it's just going to be a very, just a big, I don't want to underline it or undermine it by what I'm about to say, but just like a wow. I don't know what else to say. It's just awful and something I don't exactly know what the answer is to be done, what needs to be done, and what happens with accountability. I personally think that Alistair Clarkson and Chris Fagan should just step down, do the right thing. And we need to have, I think, an external review, not an in-house review, an external review of every single club within the AFL and say, what the fuck is going on? Because we need to get this out now and get better and move past this kind of stuff. Because obviously it's happening within clubs.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And I could imagine some clubs are probably sitting down right now looking at this story and going, oh,
yeah, are we on the level? Like, what are we doing?
Is this happening to us?
Hey, yeah.
External review of every club, I think, but
yeah, I think that would be a good thing. But hopefully you hope that a story like this is an eye opener to some people where maybe there are teams that are doing shady shit and they see this report come out and they go, oh God, we should probably stop, or we should probably, hey, like, let's check our inner workings. Are we doing the right thing? Like, are we doing good things? And maybe, who knows? Again, like,
what a shitstorm though. What an absolute
competition. Yeah. Competition, greed, things like that make you overlook a lot of things. It's just a terrible story. It's a terrible story. And it happens too much throughout all of sport, no matter where you are.
It just happens too much throughout the world. It's just like,
yeah. I mean,
to believe that racism isn't a thing, to believe that sexism isn't a thing, to believe that homophobia and transphobia and all these things aren't things, like, I don't know, man.
It's everywhere.
It's still a massive thing, and anyone that, like we said before, anyone that doesn't believe that is just turning a blind eye at the world. Or you just truly do have white privilege. And sometimes you don't even realize you have white privilege.
Yeah, I would say so. But there's bad shit that happens all around us, and I mean, look, you can still be a good person and live a good life surrounded by the things that we read and the things that you see, but at the same time, like, you got to acknowledge that the shit's there. If you can't even acknowledge that the shit's there, then like, what,
just because when I say like we have white privilege doesn't mean we're bad people. It's just acknowledging that we do have privileges in this world just because we are white. We have privileges just because we're men.
100%.
We're white men. We have more privilege than pretty much anyone else on earth.
Yeah. And it doesn't mean that we didn't work hard to get where we are.
It doesn't mean that at all.
Things were given to us, like, but it also means that, like, we don't have to deal with some of the things that people that don't look like us have to deal with.
Yeah.
That's all.
And women.
That's all.
And
yeah,
I just couldn't.
That's all.
I mean, and it's just acknowledging that, not turning a blind eye to that, not being like, what are you talking about? I don't have any privilege.
It's not that hard. It's not that hard to acknowledge. You know what I mean?
It's not that hard to look back 50, 60, 70 years.
Some people take it so personally as like, oh, like, and it's like, dude, we're not attacking you. We're not saying, like you said, we're not saying you're a worse person because you're white. And people always say that, like, well, am I supposed to feel bad about what happened 2,000 years ago? Kinda.
Yeah, because it's history.
It's not you. Like, you shouldn't feel bad about, like, you personally because you weren't there, but you need to acknowledge that the history of our people isn't fucking great.
Why?
It's not fucking great.
And don't just think it just happens in certain places in the world. Just because it happens everywhere. And like, I know for me is that things like Australia Day and stuff like that is very awkward because it's the day that white people took the land away from Aboriginal people.
And that's what our Thanksgiving is my favorite holiday. Not because of what it stands for, but like, it's a Thursday, it's in the middle of the week. You make a big meal, you have your family over, there's football on, you drink, you're eating fall type stuff. My favorite season. Thanksgiving is my favorite holiday. But Thanksgiving was when Christopher Columbus and white people from Spain came over here where the Native Americans were, and they said, yeah, this is ours now.
That's close. That's
we're
acknowledging
kill all you and rape all of you and ruin everything that you have here. But this is ours now.
that's basically what happened here, is that they just come and took the, like, when people, there's nothing better than when a white person in this country looks at a brown person or looks at a brown person on TV. I've heard it happen.
Yeah. I
And
mean,
says,
the Pilgrims, it's not really Christopher Columbus, but the Pilgrims, like
sure.
Yeah.
They look at someone on television or around and they're not white and they say, I wish they would go back to where they came from. It's like, if they went back to where they came from, I'm pretty sure
they'd be right here.
We'd be on the first boat out of here.
Yeah, they'd be right here.
So, like,
they'd be where we are.
Just acknowledging that, again, white privilege, and acknowledging white privilege does not mean you're a bad human being, or that you've done anything to, you personally haven't done anything to different raced people. It just means acknowledging, hey, I have a pretty good life just because of what happened in this time. And oh my God, imagine being around in that time, and acknowledging that black people, brown people, different race people have a harder time getting the things that we just get. And that could come down to the slightest thing, a job interview, stuff like that.
Yeah,
when you
getting
don't think
pulled
about
over by a police officer.
Yeah, and that happens in this country too, people. It's not just America. And if an Aboriginal person gets pulled over by a police officer in this country, you best believe that they're going to be treated different. I'm not saying every single police officer.
I'm not saying every African American person in America that gets pulled over gets killed. That's not what I'm saying.
That, and I'm also not saying that every single police officer in the world is an evil person. I'm just saying that when you look at the generalization of everything, you have to realize what's going on. Otherwise, you're turning a blind eye to what's happening in the world. So just because of, there was a big argument about people protesting in this country about Black Lives Matter. And I'm like, if you're arguing about that in this country, you're not looking at the problem that we have in our own country as opposed to America as well. So it's a whole thing. And what this sport is a really bad thing for this kind of stuff. There's a reason that, at least in my neck of the woods and in AFL, there is not one openly out person, because I couldn't imagine the culture. If this is happening in these areas, imagine the culture in these areas. From my understanding, in the NFL, there's very few openly. Exactly, there's one. So do the math on all of that. It's why, look at the way people look at women's sports. You know what I mean? There's all these different areas, and sport is a very weird culture. It's a very boys culture. And things need to change. Things need to change. Stories like this, me and JPJ should not be reading, let alone what those people went through. I mean, we're just reading it, but like we should not be seeing stories like this, because it shouldn't be happening. And it's easy for me to say, and it's like, oh, well, look at you. And white privilege right here is just being able to read this story and not have to live through it. So, just the whole, an absolute mess, to put it lightly. A mess. Yeah. But next week we will have JPJ versus Australia, and we're going to have some fun, and we'll have a laugh next week. And I'm sure I'll talk about the AFL Grand Final of what happened this
have
Saturday.
A recap of sorts. Yeah.
But
so who is it now?
It's
the
Sydney Swans. Yeah, Sydney Swans and the Geelong Cats. And
Geelong's good. Geelong has to be the overwhelming favorite.
They finished on top of the ladder
first, right? So they're the overwhelming favorite. I'm assuming.
Minor unfortunately, they're very good.
Sydney, obviously, they made it to your former playoffs. Are they good though? Have they won championships before?
Yeah, Sydney have won a few premierships before. Geelong have as well. They've never played each other in a grand final, so that's kind of exciting. Okay. Geelong are older players, but they're all very good, so they're going to be good for the next year or two, and then they'll all start to retire.
Yeah, they'll start to get out, fall off.
So Geelong are very good right now. Sydney have got like a mixture of older and a lot of good young players. Sydney come really good at the end of the season. They got their form at the end of the season, and people were like,
"Hey, you want to?"
I mean, it's a good time to get.
You want to get hot going in,
but I'm pretty sure
you want to start playing hot going in.
I don't know the exact streak, but I'm pretty sure if Geelong win this week, they're in like a 16-game winning streak.
Wow! All right, that's pretty good.
15.
That's pretty good.
Something around those lines. Yeah. So I think it would be a little bit of an upset for Sydney to win. Also, I have a tendency to go for interstate teams that aren't in Victoria, because that's where AFL like to base everything. Because AFL comes from the VFL, which was the Victorian Football League. It's a whole thing. But like Victoria, all the media is based in Victoria. Everything happens in Melbourne. it's the home bet of footy. So sometimes I like to go for interstate teams just to be like, screw you, AFL.
Sure.
But I like Sydney too. Sydney are cool. I remember sending you earlier in the year when you remember when I sent you back in April when that guy kicked a goal and then everybody came into the stadium. That was Buddy Franklin. He plays for the Sydney Swans.
All right, cool. All right, so he's still on the team now.
Yeah, he's still on the team. He's pretty good. He's a bit of a cocky guy. He's older and he's been there for makes a lot of money.
Yeah, because I think it was like a monumental goal.
He kicked his 1000th goal.
That's right.
That's a lot of goals.
That'd be cool. If he can get one more championship before he retires at some point.
And he just signed on for one more year. He said one more.
Okay.
So he's doing one more season after this year. So, to get a premiership and then ride off into the sunset.
Yeah, ride off in the sunset as a champion. I think
he's 37 or something like that. 36. Yeah. So he's getting up in age. Your body can't really do that for much longer. So good for him. But yeah, I'm a Sydney Swans supporter this Saturday. So red and white, baby. I'm not going for Geelong. Don't worry. So the grand final is a whole massive day. That shit. I will not be watching SmackDown this week. Just putting it that way, because that shit starts at 8:30 in the morning. You have all your pre-entertainment, you have all your breakdowns. The game starts at 1:30 or 2 o'clock or something like that. It'll go into 5 p.m. Day drinking will be involved. It's going to be a good day. It's
love it.
I think the weather's meant to be beautiful because we're in spring, so we're starting to get into sunny days and all of that. I think it's meant to be beautiful weather on Saturday, so I can have a barbecue, watch the footy, got people over, have some ciders. It's going to be a good day. So it's going to get rowdy. I can tell you that.
Hey, man.
It'll get rowdy.
That's what it's for.
But I'll be all over Twitter. Don't you fucking worry, JPJ. You'll see it when you're still awake, too. That's the thing. It'll be starting. And we're holy shit, this is really... It's going to be a day. But yeah, I'm a Sydney Swans man, so that means because JPJ has no cat in the game, he's also a Sydney Swans man because fuck...
Fair.
Had no cat in the game.
I'll wear the allegiance this weekend.
Yeah, no Geelong fan here. And a lot of players that left the Adelaide Crows went to Geelong.
Gotcha.
So
all right, well,
fuck them. No, not really, but so yeah, it'll be a good day. So next week we'll do all that, and we'll have a much lighter episode than this. Sorry to get so heavy, but hey, I mean, it's life.
Yeah,
there was no way I wasn't going to talk about. I was going to just be like, oh, we'll talk about that, then we'll do some fun stuff. I'm like, I can't. You can't just go from that to just being like, well, never mind. Let's talk about this shit. Just would have been a bit weird. So you're getting this episode early this week, everybody, but we'll be back to our regular time of Thursday at 9 p.m. Australian Central Standard Time. As you know by now, I'm back on Love Wrestling. JPJ's obviously been there the whole time. So we're getting some stuff out in the next month or so whenever I kind of get around to doing everything and stuff like that. But yeah, JPJ, anything you want to specifically plug other than your normal stuff?
No, not really. Just go give me some love over on Twitch at twitch.com.
You're affiliate now.
Twitch.tv/JPJ Loves Gaming. I'm affiliate now. So any follows, subscribes, do not feel obliged to do so. But any of the love I will appreciate forever.
It's September, everybody. It's September on Twitch. So you get up to 30% off.
Yeah, I think it goes up to 20 or 30% off this month. And, we still got another week plus of that. So, now's the time. I have ads on my channel now because I made it to affiliate. So if you want to avoid those, subscribe and you're free, But yeah, so I got that going on. It's been a lot of fun doing that stuff. So yeah, just go give me some love over there. You know where you can find me with the Love Wrestling stuff. I promote it every week, and it's below us here.
Yeah, so below us.
Go check that out, and then yeah, that's all.
Until next Thursday at our regular scheduled time. We'll see you on the next one. We'll have some fun next week as I just grill JPJ on Australia. And he did get prepared. I will say JPJ did get prepared this week, but hey, executive decision to be like, just put that in the pipeline for another week.
Yeah.
But until next time, folks, we are out of here. Have a good rest of your day.